You might be wishing you could spend these hot and humid days of summer by the beach, but this is a fantasy likely reserved for special occasions. I find refuge under the shade of a mighty pecan tree, surrounded by a sea of green. Growing tropical plants in pots creates a lush, beautiful, and cool environment, one that can be enjoyed on a shady porch, patio, or a small balcony. But many of our tender, shade-loving plants that hang out inside over the winter need rejuvenating by the time spring rolls around. So in this video, I'm sharing an organic fertilizer for containers that has my favorite ornamental plants growing and glistening in the breeze. I'm Scott from New Garden Road, always out here to inform, inspire, and elevate you. Encouraging biodiversity and restoring habitat is my mission, one garden at a time. I want to start off by sharing with you some of the exciting varieties that I'm growing here. Alocasia, also known as elephant ear, are one of my favorite to grow in containers. Now, these do have a pretty good root hardiness factor, generally down to 17 degrees. And when they're grown in containers, they will be more exposed to cold air, cold temperatures, so that makes them a little bit less cold tolerant. Along with those alocasia, I have some tree philodendron. Now, two of these came from one of my plant friends, and I just realized that the third one that I have also came from one of my plant buddies. So, plant people are good people, and they are more than willing to share with you from time to time. So keep that in mind. A lot of these plants will divide over time, and that is something that you can really, generously give to someone. You might even could set up a side business, I don't know. The philodendrons, like the alocasias, are likely one that you could grow in the ground here, but we do get some pretty cold winters, and you're gonna have them die back to the ground. So essentially, if you're growing one of these tree philodendron specimens, all that top growth that can be truly magnificent, and I had one for a very long time in that way, you're going to lose it when you get some of these really deep freezing temperatures, unless you protect them, which may or may not be feasible. Moving on to my new favorite category, and that is ferns. I've got a fever for ferns. Now, I've had a holly fern for a long time. Going back to one of my plant friends, when someone asks you to water their plants when they go away for vacation or just have to leave home for a period of time, you got to be careful, because you will end up bonding with those plants, and you might find yourself thinking, I need one of those. And most recently, I've got one here. Look at this. What a cute little fern. Now, this fern is just a baby. It's going to get like 2 feet. So it's not at its mature size. That's important to know. But one of the things that I want to point out to you is that when you find specimens in a small container like this, it's a really great and affordable way to get them growing. They're easier to pot up. At this point in time, you can put them into a container that's roughly 15% larger, even more in many cases. But this one is called commonly the Mexican flowering fern, also known as anemia. It's a new one to me. I thought it kind of looked like a holly fern, but they told me at the plant nursery that it's a native variety to the Austin area. So I'm really excited about that. I haven't potted it up. I'm going to do that soon, but recently I did pick up a couple of others, and one was a macho fern. So recently I found one of these at a local big box store in a 1 gallon size. It was like $9. I mean, it was already pretty big, so I thought, this is a no-brainer. I gotta get this thing. Who doesn't love a macho fern? If you're not familiar with these, they're just really cool. And ferns in general, like I said, I've just become infatuated with them. All the textures, the different forms that you can get. About a week later, I was shopping at one of the local independent garden centers that I frequent, and I found a lacy fern. So these are from Southeast Asia. Again, that texture, just really unique. This one was in a 1 gallon size. That's really the trigger for me. Are they unique? Are they in a small container? And if you're going to put it in a pot, then that offers you a lot of flexibility for the future. Now, in addition to all those ferns, I also have a beautiful Japanese Aralia. I've seen these around town, and I just had to have one in my collections. It grows really well in a container, and it even flowered once upon a time. One of the most cold hardy specimens that I have is a sandback jasmine, also known as Arabian jasmine. You can make a tea from the lovely scented flowers that they produce. It's really just something heavenly to have in the garden. Now, this one, I don't protect it during the winter, and when we had the most severe winter weather that I've experienced here back in 2021, This one survived with no protection whatsoever, so that's a winner. Now, it needs some help coming back. You can see it's pushing out new growth, but it needs some food. A little compost is something that I add to them all seasonally, but I want to highlight on the organic fertilizer that I want to recommend to you. This one is called Eco Organic. This is a 3-2-1 fertilizer, so it's got a little bit more nitrogen than phosphorus. Potash is the last number 1, so it's fairly balanced. This is made entirely from recycled food waste, so I think that's a really good thing. Got a couple of tips for application. Number 1, this stuff does have some fish in it, and it's got kind of a thick texture, so I recommend shaking it really vigorously. Okay, back up. Step 1, secure the lid. Make sure it's on really well, then shake it up really good, all right? Sometimes you learn the hard way. From there, I recommend using rainwater if you have that available. That's just gonna act better with the liquid fertilizers on an organic level. It's already got some bacteria and microbes in there that can be useful to plants and help things get used by the plant in a more efficient way. Plus, with our city water or treated water in general, that's going to be counteracting biology, which is not the goal when we're growing plants. We want the plants to have as much access to microbial activity as possible. And I like to make sure that the plants that I'm going to be drench fertilizing have an adequate level of moisture in the soil prior to my application. So if they're dry, I will give them a good deep soaking, make sure they're really well hydrated before I apply this product. Now, I'm applying this product as a liquid drench. Conversely, you could apply it as a foliar spray. I prefer a liquid drench because it's going straight to the roots. Plus, I feel like it's more measurable to me. So I have a 2-gallon watering can here, and I love this one. It's made in the USA. Plus 2 gallons, this makes it easy to measure because both the Rev and the Eco Organic will give you ratios per gallon of water used. So for instance, the Eco Organic is 2 to 4 ounces per gallon of water, and I might go on the heavy side at the beginning of the season to really get things started off, and then back off once things really get growing. That's how I like to use it. And when I have a 2-gallon watering can, that makes it really easy to do the math. Plus I have this little measuring cup which I use. Can you free pour these things and eyeball them? Absolutely. If you love to do that, more power to you. But if you're going to be applying this to a lot of plants, then it would make sense to measure it out just to be more economical or measured in that way. And on with more measuring, I've got a small watering can here that I like to, once I mix up everything in my 2-gallon watering can, I'll transfer some to here. I like how it pours. It's a bit, more of a controlled, lower volume dispersal, and I can keep an eye on how much I'm giving each plant. And my larger plants, I might give them like a whole one of these small watering cans, whereas the small ones, I'll split it up into a couple doses. So that's just something that I like to do. Additionally, I've got this piece of PVC. You could use a piece of bamboo or something like that. I'll use this to continually agitate the product. I'll do that really well once I add the ingredients together, mix it up really well together, and then throughout making sure it's staying mixed. Once you mix this up, you want to use it in a 24-hour period. I mean, the sooner the better. I typically use it up all in one go. So don't make any more than you think you can use. And those are some great tips. I think that can help you to get things growing. This is a great product. I've seen the results. I feel like the plants really do kind of have a good glow to them. Check this out. This is a Mayan mask alocasia. Came back from the dead. All the others leafed out far ahead of these, but I have 3 that leafed out late, and I think one of them I had sitting back by the compost bed, and I was like ready to call it quits. And then I came back there after a rain, and there were several leaves. So it just goes to show some of these plants that are root hardy, you give them a little bit of time and they'll do their thing. Additionally, you give them some organic fertilizer like this stuff, and you're really going to boost their capacity to put on some leaves, start to photosynthesize, and before you know it, you can divide these. That's how I've gotten more than one of these here. In the fall, maybe just take them out of the pot and separate them gently, and you'll have more plants. I should mention that I'm back here in my high tunnel structure where I overwinter my citrus trees and some of these tropical plants as well, but I'll put row cover or frost cloth on top of this structure. Right now I've got a 60% shade cloth. It's got a lot of direct sun for the morning. It would be a bit too much for these, and I cultivate some of the younger specimens, grow them out here before I uppot them or give them away to folks. And I also have a nice spread of turmeric here that I'm growing. So that's just a little bit of orientation, since I showed you the pecan tree up front where I've got that beautiful setting that I can chill out and arrive to every day when I come home from work or wherever I've been. So you might be asking the question, why should you grow things in pots if they're cold hardy? Maybe you're renting or living in an apartment or a condo, or you just don't have a garden established and you don't know where to put things. Also, if you really like glazed pottery, ornamental pottery, this is a great way to bring in some color and a nice decor to your space. It's really a fun way to experiment, and it may be out of necessity as well. One other reason is, like me, you're an insatiable collector and you just gotta have the next thing, you gotta have the new thing. You find something every time you go out the house. What are you gonna do? You need to grow them in containers because you only have so much land. But also the bottom line is winter weather protection. Cold temperatures can vary in my area, so sometimes they're really beyond the threshold. In that case, they need some protection from some row cover. They could be put in a greenhouse, they can be brought indoors. If you've got a sunny south-facing window, oftentimes you can bring these in for the winter and they'll be pretty happy. And when you were growing up, did you enjoy rearranging your room or moving around furniture? Because I did, and working with plants is similar to me. So each season I get to reset the stage, move things around, pot things up, play with plants. It's just what I love to do. I have a couple of other tips that I want to share with you. Number one is you can set these containers on blocks. Now, it can be bricks, it can be pieces of cinder block that you've broken up. I do this with a heavy hammer and I get a lot of little pieces that way, and this helps to maintain adequate drainage for my pots. Also, sometimes over the course of the season they will root down into the ground, which I don't necessarily want to happen, and sometimes when they make contact with the soil, you will get that drainage hole will get plugged up, and that's not going to be good for your plants. Occasionally I have some that will pool water, and that can be detrimental to the plants long term, so you got to keep your eyes peeled for that. But if you put them on blocks, then they'll be less likely to encounter that problem. The other tip that I have for you is regarding mulch and sourcing it in a free way. If you've got a big shade tree like I do, you might find some bark or some other tree parts that have fallen on the ground. You can collect those. My pecan tree has a lot of bark that I can collect from time to time, as well as the tassels that come down from the tree during the spring. You can collect those as a form of organic matter to put on top of the bare soil in these containers, and you didn't have to go buy any mulch. That's something that I really love to do, and I think it's a unique experience. In a way, I liken it to collecting seashells on the beach. All right, we're going back to the beach, y'all. What can I say? Now check out more awesome gardening videos on my channel. Like this video and follow New Garden Road for weekly content. You can grow your own tropical oasis. Keep it organic.